shortly, but also it's the last sessions too. So, and then thirdly is not a hot topic, I think. And when I regard science to this topic, and I told Frank, I'm a computer scientist. I'm a venture capitalist, so I'm a number guy. I'm a technology person. So this is a soft topic, a little bit different from the hard sciences that I'm used to, but we like challenges. So I said, okay, sure, let's do that. And so when we start to think about how to approach this topic, how to make a better decision making, say what's the best way to approach this? So I basically went through this idea of putting a framework together about how we approach this topic. Because you can look at this topic and say, well, it depends on who you are, right? If you are a company, if you're an early stage firm, or you're a most developed firm, or you're global versus being domestic in a country, you have a different way of thinking about your business. And if you are a government versus a corporation, you also have a different framework, because there are policy range that you operate as a government versus a corporation. And then beyond that, there are also other factors, such as each organization has a different organizational structure. It can be a top-down organization, it can be a flat organization, it can be a network organization. They also affect your decision process. So given that kind of wide range of possibilities, we thought the best way to approach this is just, since they're all business related, although some of us have some relationship in the government sectors. So we basically start with being a business angle, and then look at, if you are a business, you have a certain degree of globalization. It can be pure domestic. I think in our case, most of the businesses that we work with are global in nature. But some of them has a range of degree, right? If you are, say, in retail, it can be pretty domestic, but if you are in car manufacturing or in mobile phone, then you're definitely more global, because your market is global. So the degree of globalization affects how you make decisions and how you interact with foreign partners. And the other angle is really on government policy, right? Depending on the origin of your firm. In the case of mine, I'm in venture capital. I live in Beijing. We invest in companies in Beijing, in China, and also in other countries. And the policy from the government affect how you operate as a business as well. So we look at that being the second dimension, how the government policy affect your decision making. And then third, which is the most important factors on a globalized scale, is how you work with different culture. And in fact, underneath that, there's a whole list of cultural aspects that will come into affecting how you make decisions. So we just want to focus around that frame, that you are a corporation and you are working under the constraint of government regulations, you're working under some constraint of cultural differences. From there, we will say, how we make decisions, how we improve our decision making as a result, and that's the framework I like to work from. And so let me just introduce myself. My name is Stan Phong. I'm listed as a managing director of Farsight Ventures, which is my US-based entity that I operate from as a venture capitalist. But as I mentioned, I moved to China. We're actually launching a new China-based venture capital fund called Jump Tower Ventures, and which is a card been passing out to different people. So I'm a venture capitalist by training, but I'm a computer scientist in background. I used to write software, work for technical firms, and now we invest in the industry. And our goal is to invest in global startups anywhere in the world and help them globalize their business. And that's why this topic is in our heart in terms of how we operate a firm. And so the way that I will operate this panel is I'll let each one of them, individuals, panelist members, introduce themselves, and then make their statement, opening statement about this topic in any way they want. And then I'll let them finish. Each one will be 4 or 5 minutes each. And I'll come back and ask a couple of questions and get the process going. But you're all welcome to raise your hands and use your microphone to ask questions any way you can. It can be directed to any one of us, or it can be for any of us to answer. And then my goal in this is ultimately have a list of action items that hopefully help all of us in terms of improving our decision making, improving our performance of our firm, and for individuals, improving our development. And the goal is really just that, just so that when we walk out, we have a list of ideas that hopefully help us better in the future. In that respect, I would I left most panel members. push that button.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abhishek. So I'm based out of San Francisco. I'm from India, but I work in San Francisco. Glad to see you all. So I'm a data scientist and data analytics professional. I work with various financial institutions in setting up their data infrastructure and creating their data product framework and all. And also I'm an angel investor, invested in multiple companies in different sectors. I'm on board of all of them with equity. So I'm invested in a media firm, invested in a alternative and holistic healthcare product startup, and second one is e-commerce. Last one is e-commerce. It's about sports tech. It's a e-commerce platform. So couple of them are in early stage, and other one, the other startup is the media startup is generating some revenue. Yeah.
The open statements about this topic, how you make a better decision as a corporation.
Okay.
So some statement, any way you want.
Yeah. So yeah, coming to the concept of decision making. So decision making is a very broad concept. So based on the situation, right? So I always try to take rational decisions, right? Which are not too aggressive, or which are not affecting the company by a wide, like it's not shaking the company, right? And I believe in data-driven decision making, like looking at the facts and doing some market research, and having a proper go-to-market strategy on when to launch the product and who should be the end user, end customer, right? So I believe in data-driven decision making, and I'm a rational thinker, right? And I follow certain spiritual leaders and get spiritual leaders, CEOs, and get some knowledge, and how the situation affect them, and how did they react to this situation. Try to empathize in themselves, right? So yeah. So I follow certain best practices on decision making, where try to list down all the alternatives, and also try to list down all the alternatives, and see what is the end goal of each alternative, where it is taking me to. Is it putting me at a greater risk, or is it so is the decision can be reversible or not? So if the decision is reversible, I try to take risk, and if a decision is irreversible and it's affecting, it's a major decision, so I do proper research and think rationally, consult the experts, and take a decision.
Good. I think you're engineers by training. There's a technical approach to decision making. Rosario, your turn. Yeah, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Rosario Angelo J. Rodriguez. You can just call me Ruel for short. I'm from the Philippines. I have really diversified in terms of experience. I used to work in government. I also worked in retail, in manufacturing, technology, BPO, and most recently is in fintech. Yeah, but now I'm just moving to build up my own consulting business in the Philippines. Yeah, regarding this topic, as I reflect on reappraising decision-making style, I just kind of think of how to, because it's so broad, as Rodriguez just mentioned a while ago, and I think of simplify it, and I just thought of a pronoun in making decisions. And one is the I decision, meaning the directive, the authoritarian way of making decisions, and the U decision, which is delegation, decision making by delegating, and the we, which is the collective, participative type of decision making process, and the fourth is the our, which is the team, collaboration, consensus approach. And of course, I can further expound this later, as I've given 5 minutes. So, but now amidst the globalization, as as Stan a while ago was mentioned, this which really brings diversity in terms of culture and all other aspects in the business. As leaders, it is very crucial for us to know what and when to use a decision-making style. But of course, we must ensure that this decision-making style is based on whatever leadership framework you adopt. As for me, though, by default, since I'm a security guy, I'm a security executive working for several multinational companies managing South Pacific. By default, I'm more of the I in terms of situation. But since I aspire to be a servant leader, I really prefer the we, which is, of course, getting the feedback from people. And of course, finally, I have to make a decision. This guides me, of course, to serve the people and all the organization which I'm into. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting comment. I think he's a philosopher. Is how I classify his expression. But very interesting. We'll combine it with a technical approach, and we'll come back and give some examples. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sam. Hello, everyone. My name is Ritsu Saito. Last 20 years, I've been working for two totally different worlds. First 10 years, I was working for McKinsey in private equity firm RHI. So actually, logic is a common language to really unite the people from diversity background to make an effective decision making. But I also feel the limitation with, especially when you have to create something or add some value in the decisions. In last 10 years, actually, when I became a director of Sigmaxis, it's a new business incubation firm, we actually start collaboration with the art company, White Ship. Actually, CEO was over there, but we actually, and we learn a lot from the art. I can explain the detail later, but I think important thing in decision making, logic itself has a limitation, and what is quite important is really vision, passion, intuition, things beyond logic. How to combine the logic and things beyond logic is quite important to make an effective decision making. So with that context, I would like to contribute to the discussion. And one more thing, I have to claim that I'm not the expert of decision making. I make poor decisions every day. I never told my wife that today's agenda is decision making. But in business, there's a lot of failures, but making an effective decision is quite important area. So I'm quite happy to be in this panel. Thank you.
All right. They classify you as an organizer, corporate types. Is that about fair?
Yeah. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michal Trevish. I spent more than 20 years in the receivables finance industry, and I used to be the chairman of Asian chapter of International Factoring Association. Also, I was consultant on factoring to Techcombank Vietnam, so it wasn't my first time in this beautiful country. But a little bit less than 3 years ago, I completely changed my professional career, and I am a founder of crowdsourcing agency. And what we are trying to do, we are trying to create the community of supporters around different interesting projects, companies, and organizations. And also we are trying to find extraordinary solutions of the most complicated issues and challenges with the help of intellectual resources from this community of supporters. My initial statement today will be about football. So I came from Russia. Russia was the country hosting Football World Cup this year, maybe you heard, and some of Japanese team was excellent in my opinion. And I think that football is a very interesting phenomenon in principle, because more than 100 years ago, 150 years ago, nobody heard about football. Now football has billions of supporters all over the world. And for instance, if you take famous European football clubs such as Real Madrid, Manchester United, and so on, they have supporters not only in Europe but also in Asia. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions supporters of Asia. So to be the supporter of the football club, it means that you are the part of the winning team. And for many people, it's very important to become the winner. And I think that to be the supporter of commercial company, not necessarily football club, it's also a chance to be the part of the winning team. And when two supporters of the same football club meet with each other, they discuss some, let's say, business issues. Maybe is it necessary to hire a new coach, or is it necessary to attract new players and to change the scheme of the game and so on. But they have no influence. And if supporters of commercial company could have an opportunity to have some influence, it will raise their motivation to support the company. So my idea is that it is important to include in the decision-making process of some commercial companies not only stakeholders, not only government regulators, not only founders, not only key managers, but also some external communities. And this can help to attract ideas and attract maybe fresh opinion from people with different experience, different mentality, and so on. So what we are trying to do in our company, we are trying to include people from different countries, from different nationalities, different professions in the decision-making process. And to get some extraordinary, maybe even genius solutions of the most complicated business issues as the result.
Very, very interesting. As you can just tell, just from 4 of us being diverse as in terms of background and location and personal experiences, you got a 4 different approach right there, right? One is a technical, data-driven approach. One is a philosophical approach on what you think a person should do, and then from the corporate approach, organized way of managing a decision-making, to committee approach, which is the Russian and the socialist background. So as you can see, it's very diverse. And so how do you really address that? So at the end, we thought, and it really depends on the case situation. You have to be flexible on how you make decisions based on the situation you are in. And every one of them is a challenge, but there has to be a solution. You know, we're a business type. Our job is to solve problems, and when we face a challenge, we figure out a proposed solution. So in that respect, I thought the next stage of our discussion will be, let's just talk about examples. They will probably give you almost like a Harvard Business School case study, right? In a simplified way. Well, there's a situation that's from real life, and how we can improve it. And then come back, and we'll kind of see if we can summarize that in a framework. So let me just start where you guys to think about examples from your background. You have some already, just think of a new one, Mikhail. I'm sure that you think of something. Actually, let me give you a situation. There's a real situation. We have a company who is working with the government agencies in China. And so, as you know, when you deal with the Chinese government, you have to be very careful. There's really no established way of doing things. So in this situation, we dealt with the international department of one of the agencies. And so we try to get his help to introduce to some of the SOEs just to get the business development going. And then he was asking us, very simple, can you pay for my expenses? I would take people out to lunch, to dinner. It's not much. It's, in the Western world, in US, when we get an investment banker to do work, we pay retainer, right? So we pay 10,000 US per month, retainer, and then on a success fee basis, we basically get a cut of a commission. This is how, on a contract basis, we do it. And turns out we may never provide that really minimal amount of capital just to get the process going, just because we worry about the issue of being caught along the way of being a corruptive act. Now in Western culture, it's a matter of fact. You pay for services, you pay retainers for upfront expenses. So how do we solve the problem? We thought, if someone up in the chain of command have some kind of guidelines, would that be helpful, right? So that when you deal with in a situation, I think it applies to Vietnam as well, just because of the structure of the organization, is maybe there's a way to have a guideline so that when you walk in a situation like this, you have a frame of mind about what is acceptable, what is breaking the rules, and so that you move forward rather than just hesitant to make a decision because of the constraint you work under in a government situation like this. There's one I can think of. But I'll come back and talk about more examples. And so let me just send over to the panelist members. If you can think about your personal experience, situations where there may be a challenge like this on making decisions. There's a challenge on making a corporate decisions and how you address it. And if you can recommend a solution,
sure,
that'll be very helpful.
So, yeah. So, situations, so I would start with something like this. So we are in the early stage of building a product. So this is about making a healthcare product, like it's alternative and holistic healthcare. It's about so decision of being perfectionist versus having the product perfect versus having the product getting done, right? So sometimes we always think about perfection is the important thing, but go to market is also a very important thing, right? So product can always be perfect. There can always be new features added to the product, right? New features added to the product. There can always be version 1, version 2, version 3, right? So it's a confusing situation or a debatable situation where being perfect versus having a product which can be used by the end user and which is kind of in the version 1 and okay to be used by the end user, right? So in this kind of situation, so this was a recent situation we faced. So we were delaying the product launch. On trying to be perfect with all the features and having like fancy labeling and all the ingredients, like using better organic ingredients. There were some ingredients which are not available organic, but we were trying to get the organic ingredients for that. So finally, so we decided that as we are delaying the product launch, right, there would be, so this is not sustainable, right? So I took a decision where whatever we have the product, it's a working product, and we tested the product with multiple users, like giving away the samples, right? And we got good feedback. But we were still trying to be more perfect in terms of labels and adding more organic ingredients to the product and all this. But I took a bold decision that whatever we have done is fine. We got good feedback from end users, customers who are using the product, right? Let's do a product launch, and we'll find alternative organic ingredients later by researching more and by trying to find the best alternatives. So this is one of the situations which I dealt with recently.
In fact, there's technical terms for your approach on product development is MVP,
Yeah.
minimum viable products, and so they basically in the process of just launch the initial version and get the customer feedback as a way to improve the process of product development. And so there's a guideline, there's a solution to that. And so think about that. MVP is a way to develop new product for the market. Now, so far, that's what is really within a firm. I like to think about more like how we deal with the outside entities as well as further examples, if you can think of that. Ross?
Yeah. Since you said I'm on the philosophical side, I'll go through it. I'll stick to it, but I have actually other examples on regulatory, but I think I'll give that to you. Yeah, I think this is something personal, but it's very crucial since all businesses are composed of people. Just recently, actually, before I fly in here, we had our team building in our strategic planning with my department, and that's when I announced that I'm leaving the company. And well, just putting a framework into how did I arrive to the decision and what approach I did is, of course, I identified first my goal, and my goal is to make sure that I'll have a proper transition. Because what happened is, just like any other organizations, there will always be organizational changes. And our department was merged to another department, and I have 105 people who are also impacted. So my goal is, of course, while transitioning, is to make sure that we still deliver excellent results, deliver our KPIs, because we are a high-risk business. We catch the fraudsters and we jail them. So I need to make sure that my people are motivated. And well, as to alternative solutions to whatever I will have to do, whatever decision I have to take, I could have, of course, just outrightly resigned and just think of myself. And I don't need this headache. I just transfer company and that's it. But no, I went into this journey of 9 months journey with my people, making sure that they're properly taken care of. As well, I had that framework of servant leadership, so I cannot just leave them. So I made sure that they're in the proper place to support the business. And yeah, and upon selecting this decision point, I then have to, of course, implement it in that 9 months period. And it was not easy. It was not easy, really, considering that I'm a member of the executive committee, and of course, due to the change, I have to report to my former colleague, who happens to be a European. So he was my former. I mean, I'm one of the only local in the company, but that's okay. I mean, what's important there is that I devised a plan, and that's, of course, identify what is my goal in this transition, and then what are the options I have to take. Will I just leave, or make it easier for me, or bring my people to this journey of change? Because as leaders, we always speak about change management, and here I am. I will just leave and just not show my people how to manage change. So my choice was to bring my people together with me in this journey, and of course implement that. And that team building, wow, it was really a sea of tears. All my people were crying, and because I have to, although I already prompted them of my plan, but yeah. So that's just right before I fly in here. So yeah, this is one important factor in any organization, is the people. So I think that's my personal experience. As to, yeah, it was a difficult decision that I have to take.
All right, good. Let me just, there's a management term for that too. It's a management by objectives. It's a management style where you actually get together and have objective layout, top down from an organization, and then filter it down to the detail level for the employees and employee groups. So when you have objective layout up front and people kind of know about their going forward in the same directions and their charges, their measurements, and then the performance as a result will actually come out better. It's just a management objectives style of managing. And
okay, so let me talk about the decision-making issues of Japanese companies for a specific example. Last 10 years, I've been, as a director of Sigmaxis, I've been working with more than 100 companies for their transformation. And typical issues is that they try to decide, well, they need, say, it's innovation is needed, and try to kind of create a plan. But it's logically well created, but sometimes the leader who committed is missing, or the vision is missing sometimes. And that actually happens many startups as well, well, some companies as well. And what I think is, what is really needed is the creative confidence to integrate logic and also your vision, intuition, passion, things like that. Sometimes in the corporate world, it's very hard even for leaders to talk about your personal passion or vision, but this is necessary because the plan without vision is not executed. So we actually try a lot of things to change that situation, and so far what worked best for us is actually the art workshop called Egaku. It's a finger painting workshop created by Japanese artist Kuni Yazawa. And we actually let the executives draw their vision by hand before making a serious management discussion. And that will really open up the personal side of executives. Also, help their visioning process, reflection process. And if we do that type of workshop for 10 management, 20 management, before number discussion, that will really works well. And one specific example is actually for our company, Sigmaxis. 10 years ago, we started up a company. We gathered people from a lot of fields. But then Lehman shock happened. So we had 100 people. We have no project. And I was executive assistant of CEO at the time. And CEO said, we need vision building. We got to gather leaders. And we did. And I proposed to let's do the finger painting in the beginning. And CEO agreed, and actually it worked really well. Finally, like professionals really opened up their feelings, and we got understood each other as a human, not as a logical monster. So, that power we actually really leveraging to transform a lot of organizations, not only corporates, but the NGOs and social sectors. But so those power is something I believe we should really leverage for the future effective decision making.
thank you for the input. And there's a management guru decision process. It's what the McKinsey organization can do for you. Besides a bunch of other consultants can do this also. Now, they bring a very interesting point because as a venture capitalist, right, we get involved in a lot of early stage companies where the founder's vision and passion drive the development of the firm for a long period of time. But eventually, when the firm gets to be more developed and bring in outside managers who are experienced, and sometimes they take over the founder's role as a leader of the firm. Sometimes they don't do that. Depends on the development of the CEO's own capabilities. And if you look at that two extremes, founder-driven, passion-driven leadership is very different from organizational leadership, where you have professional managers who work together to make decision process. And that's really reflected in the comments made, is that really depends on the situation. And in some cases, the passion leadership is really what makes things cook and happens, and you don't want to destroy it. You want to keep it going for a long period of time, if that's doable. Your turn, help. Give me another good, interesting example, huh?
Well, before I will give quite exciting as an example, in my opinion. I'd like to make a comment that, in my opinion, decision-making style depends very much on the types of the problems. If you have, let's say, maybe complicated but very traditional problem, sometimes you need to follow very traditional decision-making style. Sometimes it's very risky to use some innovative tools. But if you have unusual problems and you want to achieve some unusual, extraordinary, very ambitious goals, you need to use something new. After that, I can mention one of my favorite examples from our experience. Our first client was and still is musical festival, violin festival. So they organized concerts of classical violin music. And they have very unusual problem how to earn money, because a lot of cultural companies are thinking about culture, they're not thinking about money. Our client thinks about money, and also they want to enlarge the audience, because today the audience of classical music, unfortunately, is mostly quite old people, because for younger generation they prefer to hear another music. And the solution which was found with the help of the community of supporters is to combine good music and good wine. So Sten, you mentioned possible conclusions of our session, maybe to drink more beer. It is a little bit, maybe beer is very, is good combined with rock music or other kind of music, but with classical music you need to drink good wine in order to understand music better. You know, and it is very important solution, because this solution is against a lot of stereotypes with classical music, because a lot of people are thinking that classical music is something very dull, that you can't get pleasure from classical music. But if you drink good wine, you got some pleasure already. And after that, you can get more pleasure listening in classical music. So it's a good tool to enlarge the audience, but also it is the tool to earn some additional money, to monetize the project, because we suggest to charge small fee from wine producers for certification of their wines, that their wines harmonize with classical music. So it's an unusual solution, but it is an unusual solution because the problem is unusual. So it's against the traditional problem in cultural area where you need maybe to sell tickets or to attract sponsors to cover your expenses for concerts, and that's all. So I think that's a good example.
So that's called creative management decision.
And
so you get creative when you have a couple of beers and some wine. In fact, I wasn't joking. When I started my career, I used to write computer software, and usually it got done overnight. And you got a project, you don't do the work until you have a couple of beer, and then you go to the computer room, lock yourself up from 12 to 6, and get it done and deliver the code. And in fact, it's what hacking is all about. So if you ever work for a startup and then you go drink beer, that's why they have the foosball table, they have beer, they have free pizza, because you become more creative afterwards. And so as a result, you make better decisions. And so there's another approach. So I'd like to maybe the next step is open the floor to see if you have some burning issue you want to address about decision making that we can help you with advice if we can. So anyone to talk about? Make sure you push the button and get the red light on and then talk. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Hương and I am Vietnamese. And I want to seek for your advice. As a Vietnamese culture, people trying to avoid confrontation, and it's also a collective kind of decision making. How do we engage the team member in the decision making to make sure that they are not compromised?
Anyone want to comment on this? Feel free.
Can you come again, please?
So my question is, for Vietnamese culture, we like to make collective decision, but a lot of time also people do not like to confront. So a lot of time when decision is being made, how do we make sure to engage the team member in the decision making process without any compromise?
So it's about whether your decision is achieving the end objective or not, right? So it's good. So for a leader to make an effective decision, it's good to take opinion from everybody, right? But a leader should take a final decision which is rational and which aligns with your long-term goal and the short-term goal, right? And make sure that your team is protected, and the decision that you take aligns is in with alignment with your long-term and short-term goal of your company and your team. That is what I do probably.
Yes, thank you for the important question. I think probably we can think about 3 steps. The first thing is if the leader know the team members personally or build a certain level of trust, that will really make things easier for them to speak up. That's one thing. Another is actually really try to foster the culture. It takes time, but foster the culture to speak openly and not criticize the different views. So that is something also leader can kind of embody. So that will change the culture. If you can you can visit a lot of organizations, you can immediately feel the culture. So that's something you can do. And in the end, the leader has to decide. So sometimes there's, of course, complications, conflicts. Then leader has to decide with vision, as I said.
I'd like to make one important note on this case. I think that collective decisions are very important, and perhaps collective decisions are the most efficient decisions. But important point is that collective decisions doesn't mean the decision of majority. The collective decision means that every member of the team can the opportunity to express his or her opinion. And after that, the leader can support maybe the minor part of the team. Sometimes you have the team of 10 people, 9 of them support decision option A, and only 1 supports option B. And sometimes option B is the best. And if you can show on some real practical example that you support this option B, despite the fact that only 1 person on your team supports this option during the discussion, it will be a good example for the whole team that don't afraid to express your unique and unusual opinion.
Yeah. Let me summarize the comments made. I think there's a umbrella thinking around all this is decision making is not a one-shot thing, right? You cannot expect that you get people in the room in about 1 hour and make decisions. So if there's a critical high-level decision for corporation that involve multiple people, say 8 to 10 people or more, it requires a lot of individual communications ahead of decision making. So you'll get a sense of what the objections are, what the opinions would be. So you spend time with individuals and understand their angle and really assess to see if actually it should change your own thinking first, rather than do it on the fly. Because as you know, in group dynamics, it's always hard for an employee to make an opinion, and then if you're the boss, and you actually were wrong, how do you change it, right? So the best is do it privately, ahead of the general meeting. So if you can spot the major opinion that could be presented ahead of time, you change them what they change you in your overall, and then you summarize it in such a way that it's written down and shared with people ahead of time, a general approach. And the best is always come up with alternate options. So there's never one decision in any decision making. You always give people at least 2 options. There's the same in any business negotiation. You want to win a negotiation, you give them 2 options. A is blue and B is also blue. And then you just decide you want A or blue, right? So there's really the technique of working with employees to make sure that everyone come out knowing that their opinion is heard. And just really summarizing the comments made so that at the end, everyone's happy on the way out because they were heard and they were convinced if they were not 100% correct. because there's no right or wrong. It's always gray in between, right? So there's a certain angle that's correct, certain angle that's not necessarily correct. So your job as a leader in the group is just collect them, summarize them, and then decide together. By the time you get to a meeting, it's already decided. It's not debating. That's how you come solving the angle. Hopefully that helps. And also, can you also talk about who you are, where you come from first before you give your question?
Yeah, this is Advocate Brahmi Devi ji. I've come from Goa, India. My question is, as you said, that when you discuss with your team and leader takes the decision, how to go for a result which will be good for your organization. The leader takes the decision, but decision is taken for some results. So how the leader can go for the results? Once you take the decision, because you see that you study A part and B teamwork, and then the leader takes the decision. So I want to know regarding the results.
Right. And ultimately, everyone, that's why going back to one of the comments a bit earlier, if you go into a objective approach where everyone there's a corporate objective, there's always the annual meeting of a company at the beginning of the year, the plan for the whole year, right? There are objective, 3 or 5 things you want to get done. Make sure that you have the numerical numbers. It's not like general iffy type of statement. It has to be number-driven objective for the whole year. And it's all presented to everyone knew about it, and then translate to next layer, where there's key performance indicators, KPI, that each employee is measured based on their own particular responsibilities. And that process of annual planning, objective-driven approach is the most effective way to drive the decision process. So when you come back to during the middle of the year, if there's no decision to make it, you go back to the objective for the whole year. Are we doing this around the objective for the corporation for the whole year? Now, I'm not saying that that's always correct, right? You adjust it during the year based on market condition changes, competitive situation changes, you have to adjust to it. But as a corporation, when you get bigger and bigger, the only way to drive decision is that everyone know about it up front, they'll move the same direction. And otherwise, if you don't do that, then you'll be surprised if you ask an employee, if you go back tomorrow to organization, what is the corporate objective for this year or for 19? You got 10 employees, you got 12 answers. So I think the best way is just plan. And then if there's any, ultimately there's always ultimately the CEO, the board directors have to be the ultimate decision makers. So at one point, you just have to be strong about it if it comes to it. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead. Okay.
Some of the issues actually, the result is not clear yes or no, right? So leaders has to be responsible for the result, but sometimes there's no clear yes or no, but you have to decide, right? And I think one important thing to be aware is decision is not about 100% right. Especially a situation like innovation or try to new challenges, you don't know that, even the CEO don't know the answers. So you need the guts to decide and see the result and act based on it. So that's the important thing, I think.
Can I add? Yeah, in any goal, any numbers that you have to deliver, as I always say, it's the people that drives numbers, and it should not be the other way around. Because if we are to communicate to the employees that, hey, this is the number, then you do your thing. No, it should not be. It should be, hey guys, what can we do to hit this number? So it is important for us to involve our people in that aspect. Yes, we have results to deliver, but let's involve our people. How are we going to get these results? What can we contribute? Because in that way, they'll have that sense of ownership as to the delivery of the goals. Yeah.
Anyone else has a question? Feel free. Introduce yourself and then the question.
Yes, hi, my name is Kirk Jordan. I'm from the U.S., but I work here in Vietnam. And I wanted to ask you in particularly about the communication styles of kind of implicit and explicit communication between, because that really has an effect on decision making about getting the right, trying to interpret the right answer, or you think I'm supposed to know because you said this, and also as kind of a side to that, also the idea of faith, about in negotiations and decision making. If you could maybe talk a little bit about that.
Let me start with, there's a third point in the introduction, the cultural differences. And turns out I got a list of at least 9 items when it comes to cultural differences, attributes between the West and the East in general. So what you brought up is one of the attributes, right? And an implicit decision versus explicit statements being made in Western negotiation and directives. Unfortunately, that one takes time. I can go into details, but I think you guys, if you write your list, you will know the cultural difference between East and West in general. There's a list of 10, right? But how do you address it? At the end, I think one of the objectives of this forum is really communications. It just takes a personal exposure, personal engagement to understand. And luckily, the more we develop on a global setting and under this global vision communities, the more we understand each other, the more we actually end up being in the middle. I think it evolved. I personally have done it both ways, and being in the East and the West. And turns out I'm not a little bit neutral, and based on the situation, I'll take a certain approach to it. I think it's one approach is just more engagement, just more professional training. If it is an organization, it's just basically bring in consultants to train employees on cultural adaptation as a way to improve the process of communications. Any more comments from the other panel members?
I'm glad that, my name is Preeti. I'm a management psychologist. So my question is to Mr. Saito. The question about explicit and implicit communication was brought up, and also about understanding the culture of different countries. And now it's more of a global environment where everybody, companies are working globally together. In terms of understanding the team across the globe with different countries, we try to understand their culture and try to interpret their behavior by trying to empathize, understand, and interpret the emotions that we see in people. A lot of cultures are a lot more expressive, whereas some are not. I do see in Japan, like there's this culture of where people go out for late night drinking and all that, and I'm a huge supporter of that, because I think those are the times when you have those conversations which you do not typically have during the office hours, because office hours we are all very busy doing the work that we do. But I think Japan brings that very beautiful thing that people really stay for long in the team. My question is, for probably people within Japan, it's easier to understand each other, but I think people, particularly in Japan, are very good at emotional management, in the sense that it is not very easy to see through them, what exactly is their response. Whereas if you see probably an Indian, I think we are over-expressive. Before we even think, we show the expression on our faces. So it's easy to read and easy to interpret. And in terms of decision making, if you understand and interpret other people's reaction, it's easier to know, to gauge how much buy-in you have, or if what their response is. So what do you think what strategy we should use to be able to understand people working with our Japanese colleagues, that which could expedite, decision making?
Anyway, in addition to drinking, what I would propose, based on my experience actually, so the finger painting I mentioned is the actually really powerful way, so to really understand each other and open up the kind of hidden thoughts or ideas. And that's something actually we do in a multicultural company as well. So the possibility is using the possibility of art is something I would really recommend. Also, if you can build the personal ties, one-on-one, is another step forward. But I think, combination. But I think there's a lot of ways actually really open up the culture. I think, yeah. Don't worry too much about that.
Yeah, going back to the question of the gentleman on implied and explicit. Yeah, that's why I always say that, Net Promoter Score, the survey feedback actions, I'll just speak about the Philippines, for example. You'll always have a good survey feedback from employees because they will not really much express themselves on that. But on the other hand, there are some grievances, there are some issues. So as an executive, you have to really make sure that you are well connected with your middle managers, because that's where these employees, because it's important for example, for Filipinos, is on the trust level. If they don't trust you, really, they won't just speak up. Most of the time. But unlike myself, of course, I'm different. But there are so many, in general, concerns on regarding, this is what I see, but I will not say it. So it's important to have that connection with the local middle managers, whom of course the people below will be able to express themselves, rather than really wasting time on the NPS, and that's how it is. So yes. Okay.
Any other questions they want to raise? If not, let me just give you another. Think about questions. We have half an hour, so for a long time. But I want to give you another. Oh, go ahead.
My name is Kimi Hasebe. I founded art company. So I have a question. 意思決定のプロセスが変わってきていると思うんですけれども、どういうふうに今後変えていく必要を感じてますかっていうのを皆さんに聞きたいです。時代が変化している中で、不確実性の高い時代に入っている中で、意思決定のプロセスが変わっているはずなんですけれども、そのあたりどうお考えなのか聞きたいと思います。
So in the times, in the present world that we live in, things are kind of changing very quickly. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of complexity. In this environment, in this changing environment, how is this impacting the way you yourselves and organizations make decisions? I mean, how are these, how are the decisions, the decision process, how is it different from in the past?
Yeah.
I didn't get the question.
I mean, the question is, given the rapid pace on how things are changing around the globe, how you actually react to it and make better decisions.
There's a lot of uncertainty,
right?
And
ambiguity. At the end, decision is never 100% sure. There's always a gray in between. There's no black and white answers. So, as a professional investors, our job is just keep learning, keep reading, keep meeting people. The more you read, the more you meet people, the more you get reaction from how you deal with the people, then the better decision you can make. And you cannot go into a enclosed room and just watch TV, just like our president does in the U.S. It doesn't work. You really have to deal with the real world and get some reaction to the process, and then make better decisions that way.
I think the key thing there is really authenticity. No matter what culture we are, I think it's the real way of showing that we care. We care for people. We care for the organization. Because even in a customer perspective, there's always this buzzword of customer centricity. But actually, what does that really mean? It means that we're trying to understand what the customer wants, what the customer needs. So it's really, the key there is, I am authentically caring for you. I mean, in whatever decision you make, if you are focusing on the person you are talking to rather than on yourself and your personal biases, then that would be I think it will result to better. But of course, there's no 100%, as Tan said. But I think it's a key ingredient.
Yeah, I think bias is point.
And one thing I want to add is, so what we really need more is, I think, creative competence. As I said before, it's very easy to be logical in these days. And now there's AI and things like that. So we have a power to logic, of course, and you can leverage that. But in the end, it's your will or it's your vision. What type of society you want to create. I think that's the most important thing. And if you have a clear vision, and if you decide with guts, I think people will resonate and work together. So what is required is not clear logic. Oh, well, I think so that bridging the good logic and also things beyond logic is what is really needed in the future.
Thank you.
So on that, just on that point, with regards to, my name is Carl from Fortis Bridge here in Vietnam. So what is the expectation of timing of decisions? So as we now live in a faster, more connected community, and younger people are looking for the immediacy, so for the more senior people here, what are the expectations, what has changed with regards to what's expected when to make a decision? Like, is it next week or tomorrow, or is it next year? So I'm curious on that.
Sure. In fact, let's use a real example. In fact, I want to present this since I got the floor, and listen to me on this one. On trade negotiation between U.S. and China. Turns out, I think the topic is a lot broader than what you come on the surface. The timing, of course, China has 100 years. U.S. has 3 years, 2 years to go, right? So it's a different range of timing. And so China is going to go way out until the presidency changed, and then we all go back to normal. And that's really the answer, quick answer. But turns out when it comes to trade negotiation, that was actually my work. I spent a year at Harvard Kennedy School about 7 years ago as a fellow, and I did a paper on international cooperation. Turns out in the case of international relations, if you take international relations theory, game theory, and also competitive advantage theory combined together, and look at each country's factors of production, that means from cash, people, land, technologies, timing of the window, or how long it takes you. It turns out if you take all these 10 major factors and compare US and China, there are 3 outcomes, turns out. It's not just one. And one of the outcomes that everyone talk about is being competitors, which is actually wrong. There are 3 ways of working between 2 countries, any 2 countries, just between Vietnam and European Union is an example. Turns out you can compete, you can collaborate, or you can coordinate based on the factor of productions. Turns out if you take that and break it up, if you really look deeper, there are certain areas that US and China should collaborate to have a better outcome. In certain areas, they should coordinate. And turns out among the 9 factors I studied, only of 2 that is competitive. And then, but unfortunately, in a politically driven environment, the competition being the primary driver for discussion. And so if I were advising you to think about this, next time you think about this issue, think broader. In fact, if you want to, on my LinkedIn profile, actually post my paper, this presentation that I used. You're welcome to dig through it. And that's really the way to manage the relationship, not just being competitors at all. But to answer your question, in China, it's just basically weigh it out. They have no rush. Anyone else want to comment on this issue?
Yeah, but I want to understand more about I mean, in what particular scenario are you talking about?
So I'm the CEO of a company, and we're making we're looking at making some major decisions. So is there an expectation today that those decisions are made quickly or slowly, and has that changed as a result of the internet, the connectivity of the world?
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Well, the way I will structure is that for instances wherein it requires emergency decision, I mean, an aircraft, I mean, a personal experience. I will not mention, of course, which aircraft, crash landed in a bay. So, I mean, I have to make quick decisions right away. I know I don't have to consult this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. It will take forever. So, I mean, in emergency situations, definitely we have to make quick decisions, and there are processes that are in place that we can, of course, use. And the decision that might take long, although in a corporate world, it's always the now, they take the decision now. We need to ramp up our business. We need to scale up. Well, I see that on a strategic perspective, these are the decision points that may take long, because this will, of course, require a lot of studies. It requires a lot of data. It requires a lot of analysis. So, and on a short-term, mid-term decision point, operationally, that's where your managers down below is useful. I mean, because if you will, of course, micromanage them and take the decision for them, then I mean that defeats the very purpose of their job description, to make decisions. So that's, I mean, strategic, functional, and operational aspect of the business. So yeah, I hope I make sense.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I understand. It's just the changes. I'm 60 years of age, and making decisions. When I was a lot younger, there was an expectation you didn't have to make them as quickly. But as we get into a more uncertain world, is there an expectation from the staff that you make those decisions, and the shareholders are expecting you to make a decision within a very quick period of time? I'm just asking about your experience in that.
May I also comment on this very important question? I think that today there are too many very quick decisions. And quick decisions sometimes means the decision of very low quality. And I think that also it depends on how you spend the time you need for decision. If you spend it in a lot of meetings, maybe it's not very efficient, but you spend the time in thinking, it is very efficient. And I think that as fast food is not very good always, and sometimes you need slow food, and you need slow traveling to get pleasure from different touristic journey. Also, you need slow thinking to understand the problem better. And for instance, according to our experience of crowdsourcing, we are starting to get some unusual solution of the most complicated issues of our clients between 2nd and 3rd of month after we raise the question. So people need at least 2 months to understand and to start to think every week about it, and after that they are ready, only after that they are ready to suggest something unusual and something deep. So of course it's not about everyday management. For everyday management you need quick decisions. But if you have strategic issue, I think that few months is really necessary, but few months in thinking. Not few months of bureaucratic procedures, but few months of thinking.
Yeah, actually, another point I want to bring up in that respect, and it depends on the level of engagement in the corporation. If you ask, actually, what the role of the CEO of a company, turns out only 2 jobs of a CEO. One is, half of the job is figure out what the company should be in, what kind of business that firm should be in terms of expansion or change of the direction of the firm. The other half is hire the people underneath him. And this is where most CEOs love to hire someone smarter than him, so he can delegate to the next level of managers to make individual specialized decisions. So if you do it right in that framework as an executive officer, actually the business will do very well, because you don't have to burden yourself in making all the difficult decisions or detailed decisions. So if you really look back, the framework for a CEO is pretty simple. Just where you want to go as a business and how are best people to execute the plan. And if you do that right, in fact, in your life, in your business, there are about 2 or 3 pivot points in your decision process that change your life directions. And this is the one you want to take a time. And the others are just a detailed noise along the way. Then it's okay to make quick decisions because the impact is minimal. So, I mean, there's a way to think about it.
I think I share experiences that, particularly on regulatory aspect. I mean, the shareholders wants to start now with the credit card or the online business, but there's we should be regulated by the Banco Central, the central bank. So we are pressured by the shareholders to make to start this now, kick this off. But the problem is there's no even an internal regulation from the BSP. So what the team did, and I was still with the Waxco, is that we were creative. So through the other industry players, so this team, including us, drafted the IRR for the government. So supporting them to make these quick changes, because otherwise, if we will wait for the government to act at times, it will take ages. So it's just really trying to understand more on what the regulator wants and what can we do to support that and reach your goal, what the shareholders want. So just.
So we have 10 minutes left. Do you have another question they want to post that we can entertain a discussion? If not, I think I changed my plan. It's hard to summarize the last an hour and a half. A list of action items. And one of the drivers really depends on situations, and then this is where you have to consult and think through how you react to it, rather than there's really no general formula on corporate decision making and how to improve it. But so maybe I will leave it in such a way that each one of the panel members does present a closing statement. Hopefully, in the last hour and a half, they learn something from a discussion and change the way they think about decision making. And if it does, say it and then give us a summary of what you learned. Maybe that's a way to kind of close our session.
Hi, thanks for giving the opportunity for me to participate and add my opinion to the decision-making theory or decision-making concept. So I would like to, so coming to your question, so I would like to put it in a way how other part, like being in Silicon Valley, right? So the startup phase emerged so fast, and if you take a decision, if you are slow in taking a decision, then you are late to the market. Then you are not meeting the shareholders' expectations and not meeting the numbers criteria. So at least my experience being in Silicon Valley for 5 years. So in this agile world where everything is changing very rapidly, technology is growing leaps and bounds, right? So I would say I would think in terms of take decision, monitor it, see if it is going in the right path. If it is not going in the right path, you take an alternative decision which you have evaluated before, right? And coming to the closing points, right? So I would like to summarize with So for effective decision making, I would the same thing. So take a decision and it's better to take a decision rather than not taking any decision. So take a decision and monitor it whether it's going in a right path. Is it giving the results that is expected through phases, right? And if it is not giving the expected results, so change the decision and take the alternate decision. And I would also add one more point, which is more important. Adding a mentor to my decision making or to the way I work added a lot of value to me. So seeking a mentor who has done it before and who has proven and who has done it before would also add a lot of value, right? And it's okay to fail in the process of taking a decision. So people usually take wrong decision. That's part of life, and everything is temporary. So you should make sure that whatever decision, if it is a failure, you should not repeat it again, and have it as a habit to not repeat the previous mistakes that you committed in life.
Yeah, I'll just end where I start. So yeah, as to I mean, as for me, it's just that when you have to make quick decisions, short term and emergency, just do it yourself. Be directive on that. And then the U is the day-to-day operations, and that is you have people managing your operations. And as to the we, if you don't have the data and the information that you have to consult your people in making decisions for short-term goals. And finally, the hour is that for more strategic decisions that you have to take, and if you are to collaborate with other members of the organization, then you have to take that. And the two key aspects in making in decision making is that for me is to be authentic and really think and care for others and the business, and not just on your personal biases.
Regarding the practical solutions, I already mentioned about the power of art and also the importance of open culture. And one thing I also add as a closing remark is I think it's crucially important to be aware of what's the driver behind your decision making. And looking back in my past, I made a poor decisions many times, but the many decisions, actually, if the decision was driven by fear or ego, most of the time you will fail in the end. But it's very hard to be aware what's behind your decision making. I also observe a lot of CEO made bad decisions driven by fear or ego. I think you will understand that. So I think it's very important to observe. That's one thing I would like to post as a closing remark. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I think this is really what we have. If you have another last-minute question, feel free to ask now. Otherwise, we'll probably end the session. And hopefully, you learn something from the communication and discussion. It's never an easy subject, and so just be alert and go forward. Just one more pause for the panelists. And they did a great job on a very tough topic.
Thank you for being there.